Welcome back, everyone. In our last lecture, we explored the 5 major leadership styles and discovered that each has strengths and weaknesses. We learned that effective leaders don't rely on a single style, they adapt. But that raises an important question. How do leaders know which style to use? Today's lecture answers that question through one of the most influential leadership theories ever developed: contingency leadership. By the end of this lesson, you'll understand why leadership effectiveness isn't just about who the leader is. It's also about understanding the people you're leading, the task at hand, and the environment in which you're operating. By the end of today's lecture, you'll be able to define contingency leadership, explain Fred Fiedler's theory, identify the 3 contingency variables, and apply this framework to real criminal justice situations. As you listen today, remember that your goal isn't simply to memorize another leadership theory. Your goal is to begin thinking like a supervisor who evaluates the situation before deciding how to lead. Imagine you're the watch commander for an evening shift. At 3 p.m., a 6-year-old child is reported missing. At 5 p.m., one of your officers is involved in a use of force incident. At 7 p.m., you're scheduled to attend a community meeting where residents are frustrated about rising crime. Would you lead each of these situations exactly the same way? Of course not. Each of these situations requires different decisions, different communication, and a different leadership approach. This simple idea is the foundation of contingency leadership. Let's begin with a simple question. What actually makes a leader effective? Is it their personality? Is it their experience? Is it their communication skills? Those things certainly matter. But leadership is also influenced by the people being led and the circumstances surrounding the event. Leadership is not created in isolation. It is the interaction between the leader, the followers, and the situation. And that is exactly what contingency leadership teaches us. Contingency leadership is based on one very important principle. There is no single best leadership style. Instead, leadership effectiveness depends on how well the leader's approach matches the situation. Think about policing. A SWAT deployment requires decisive command. A mentoring session with a rookie officer requires patience and coaching. A town hall meeting requires listening and collaboration. Different situations require different leadership behaviors. Great leaders ask themselves one question before acting. What does this situation require from me? The person most closely associated with contingency leadership is psychologist Fred Fiedler. During the 1960s, many researchers were searching for the one leadership style that would make anyone successful. And Fiedler disagreed. He argued that the better question wasn't, what's the best leadership style? Instead, it was, under what conditions does a particular leadership style work best? His research showed that leadership success depends on the match between the leader and the environment. And this insight changed leadership research forever. Fiedler identified 3 major variables that influence leadership effectiveness. First, it is the leader-member relations. Second, we look at task structure. Then third, we look at position power. Together, these 3 factors help determine whether a leader's style is likely to succeed. Let's examine each one individually. The first variable is leader-member relations. Simply put, do your people trust you? Do they believe you'll make fair decisions? Do they respect your competence? Would they willingly follow your direction during a crisis? Strong relationships create trust. And trust increases cooperation. And cooperation makes leadership much easier. Without trust, even the best decisions can face resistance. The second variable is task structure. Some police work is highly structured, such as serving a search warrant follows established procedures. Everybody understands their role. Other situations are far less predictable. A neighborhood dispute involving multiple families may change minute by minute. The more structured the task, the easier it becomes to organize the team. The less structured the task, the more flexibility and communication leaders must demonstrate. The third variable is position power. This refers to the formal authority associated with your position. Can you assign officers? Can you conduct evaluations? Can you approve overtime? Can you recommend discipline? Those responsibilities give supervisors formal authority. But I want you to remember something important. Authority comes from your badge, and influence comes from your leadership. The best supervisor possesses both. Now let's combine all three of these variables. Imagine a supervisor who has strong relationships with officers, a clearly defined mission, and significant authority. Leadership becomes relatively straightforward. Now, imagine the opposite. A brand new supervisor enters a struggling department with poor morale. There are unclear expectations and little credibility. Leading here becomes much more difficult. The combination of these variables will determine how challenging the leadership position will be. So let's look at high control situations and how you will want to lead. High control situations occur when leaders have strong relationships, clear tasks, and significant authority. Examples include tactical operations, active shooter responses, or emergency situations within correctional facilities. Imagine, these are situations where you need clear direction to protect yourself as an officer and the lives of the people you are trying to protect. Because expectations here are clear, leaders can make quick decisions and direct resources efficiently. These situations often benefit from a more direct leadership style. I would even argue you can put natural disasters and emergency situations, other emergency situations in this bucket, because that is why they have FEMA has a national incident command system, because in these situations you need somebody to lead with authority to ensure things happen appropriately. So then moderate control situations where you want to adapt and collaborate. Most daily police work will fall into this category. This includes patrol supervision on standard calls, investigations, again, standard investigations, community policing. Leaders are going to possess authority, but they also rely heavily on communication and teamwork. These situations are going to require a balance between providing direction and encouraging officer input. Good supervisors are going to remain flexible, but they're also going to maintain accountability. Now let's talk about low control situations where you want to rebuild this foundation. Low control situations are often the most challenging for a leader. Imagine you are the new chief of a department with low morale and little trust. Or you step into leading an organization through political controversy. These situations cannot be solved simply by giving orders. Instead, the leader must focus on building relationships, communicating consistently, and earning credibility before meaningful change can occur. So let's look at a case study. Imagine you're supervising security during a large public demonstration. This is something that many officers and departments will face nowadays. Some of your officers are experienced. Others are working their first major protest. Community tensions are high, and there are media cameras everywhere. Ask yourself, how strong is your relationship with your officers? How structured is the task you've asked them to complete? And how much authority do you actually have in this situation? These situations should influence how you choose to lead. Now, another decision exercise, and this is one of the most important lessons you'll learn throughout this course, is that leadership is not about having all the answers. Leadership is about understanding people and understanding situations. Some situations require decisive command. Others require collaboration. Still others may require listening more than talking. Think about the military. During combat, commanders don't stop and vote on every decision. Orders are given quickly because lives depend on rapid action. Now, compare that to planning next year's department's budget. That process benefits from discussion, input from multiple stakeholders, and thoughtful collaboration. Neither leadership style is inherently better. They're simply appropriate for different circumstances. And this is true throughout criminal justice. Here in the slide, we give you an example of a veteran detective and a rookie officer. So, how would you lead each one of them? The 14-year-old detective, what works is delegating with autonomy and a big picture direction, whereas the rookie officer needs clear instructions, frequent check-ins, and visible support. It's a great example for you guys. So far we've been talking about leadership styles and how effective leaders adapt their approach. Now we arrive at one of the most important concepts in contingency leadership theory, the leadership effectiveness equation. What I want you to notice immediately is that leadership effectiveness isn't determined by just one factor. It's not simply about whether someone is a charismatic leader or whether they have years of experience. Instead, effective leadership is the product of three forces working together: the leader, the followers, and the situation. When those three elements align, leadership becomes much more effective. When they don't, even excellent leaders can struggle. Let's start for the first element, the leader. This is you. It's your personality, your values, your communication style, your experience, and your ability to influence other people. Every leader has strengths and weaknesses. Some leaders naturally excel under pressure. Others are exceptional relationship builders. Neither is automatically better because leadership isn't just about who you are. The second component is followers. This is a part many supervisors overlook. Your team's experience level, motivation, confidence, trust in leadership, and a willingness to follow all influence whether your leadership will succeed. Imagine supervising a group of veteran detectives who've worked together for 15 years. They're highly competent and don't require constant supervision. Now compare that to leading an academy class of brand new recruits on the first week of field training. Even if you're the exact same leader, your approach has to change because the people you're leading are different. The third piece is the situation. This includes everything happening around you. Is the mission clearly defined, or is it constantly changing? Are you responding to an active shooter, conducting a routine briefing, or meeting with community members after a controversial incident? How much authority do you actually have? What resources are available? What's the level of urgency? Those situational variables often determine which leadership style will work best. When all three components come together, the right leader, working with the right followers, in the right situation, you achieve what Fiedler calls leadership effectiveness. Notice something important though. This model doesn't say there's one perfect leader. Instead, it tells us that leadership is about fit. A leader who thrives during a crisis may struggle in a collaborative planning meeting. Likewise, someone who excels at mentoring new officers might not be the ideal person to command a rapidly unfolding incident. That's why effective supervisors don't just ask themselves, am I a good leader? They ask, am I using the right leadership approach for these people in this situation right now? That shift in thinking is what separates adaptive leaders from rigid ones. Great leaders are constantly evaluating themselves, their people, and the environment before deciding how to lead. As we move forward through the rest of today's lesson, you'll see how this equation plays out in real-world criminal justice scenarios, and why understanding these three variables can dramatically improve your effectiveness as a leader. So, common mistakes supervisors make. Now let's look at some of the most common leadership mistakes, and the good news is that every one of these can be avoided. First, ignoring the environment. A leadership style that worked yesterday may not work today. Effective leaders always assess the situation before acting. Second, using one style for everything. Some supervisors always command, while others always seek consensus. Great leaders know how to adapt. Third, not assessing your followers. Your team isn't made up of identical people. Experience, confidence, and trust all matter when deciding how to lead. Finally, overconfidence. Just because you've handled similar situations successfully doesn't mean the next one will be the same. Every incident deserves a fresh assessment. The takeaway is simple. Effective leadership begins with awareness. Before you lead, take a moment to evaluate the situation, your people, and yourself. So before you lead, before you make a decision or give an order, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. First, who am I leading? Consider the experience, confidence, and emotional state of your team. A rookie officer may need clear direction, while a veteran detective may need autonomy. Second, what is the mission? Is this a routine assignment with established procedures, or is it a rapidly evolving incident where conditions are constantly changing? The answer should influence your leadership approach. Finally, what resources and authority do I have? Think about the personnel, equipment, and decision-making authority available to you. Understanding your limitations is just as important as understanding your strengths. These 3 questions only take a few seconds to answer, but they can completely change how you lead. The best supervisors don't simply react. They assess the situation first, and then choose the leadership style that gives their team the greatest chance of success. So, one of the habits that separates great leaders from average ones is that they continually assess what's happening around them. Leadership isn't a one-time decision, it's an ongoing cycle. It starts with observation. Observe. Gather the facts and pay attention to what's changing. Don't make assumptions. Next, assess. Consider your team, the situation, and the risks. Ask yourself what the mission requires and what resources you have available. And then decide. Based on your assessment, choose the leadership approach that best fits the situation. Sometimes that means giving clear direction. Other times it means collaborating or delegating. Finally, lead. Communicate your decision early, take action, and monitor the results. The important thing to remember is that this cycle never really ends. As conditions change, effective leaders go right back to observing and assessing before making their next decision. In fast-moving situations, experienced supervisors may go through the entire process in just a matter of seconds. So here's another scenario. Let's put contingency leadership into practice with a real-world example. Imagine you're the incident commander for that public protest. At the beginning of the day, everyone is calm. The crowd is gathering, officers are in position, and everyone understands the operational plan. Your leadership is primarily directive as you coordinate assignments and make sure everyone is prepared. As the event grows, though, tensions begin to rise. Emotions are running high, and you're starting to see signs that the crowd could become unpredictable. This is a time to increase communication, not just with your officers, but with the community leaders and event organizers. Your leadership becomes more collaborative as you gather information and adjust your plan. Now imagine the situation suddenly escalates. Objects are thrown, officers are assaulted, or a serious threat emerges. At that point, the priority shifts to protecting lives and restoring order. Leadership becomes more directive because there isn't time for lengthy discussions. Clear commands, accountability, and decisive action are essential. Finally, after the incident is over, your role changes again. During the debrief, you want officers to share what went well, what could be improved, and what lessons were learned. This is a supportive, relationship-focused style that keeps the entire team growing. The key lesson is that the leader didn't change, the situation did. Effective leaders recognize those changes and adapt their leadership style to meet the needs of the moment. So here's a practical application. Before making an important leadership decision, take a moment to run through these 5 questions. Think of them as a mental checklist that helps you slow down just enough to make better decisions. First, what happened? Make sure you understand the facts before taking action. Acting on incomplete information can create bigger problems. Second, who is involved? Consider the officers, community members, or other stakeholders. Their experience, emotions, and needs should influence your approach. Third, what's my objective? Be clear about what success looks like. Are you trying to resolve a conflict, protect lives, gather information, or build trust? Fourth, what leadership style fits? Think about the situation and choose the approach that best matches the circumstance. One style does not fit all. Finally, what happens next? Good leaders don't just think about the immediate outcome. They consider how today's decisions will affect the team, the community, and future operations. If you make these 5 questions part of your routine, you'll make more thoughtful decisions and become a more adaptable and effective leader. As we wrap up, there are 3 key ideas I want you to remember. First, leadership is not one size fits all. The style that works in one situation may be completely ineffective in another. Effective leaders avoid relying on habit and instead adjust to their circumstances. Second, adaptability is one of the most valuable leadership skills you can develop. Laws, policies, and procedures are important, but so is the ability to read people, assess situations, and respond appropriately. The best supervisors are flexible, not rigid. Finally, the situation matters. Your situation with your team, the structure of the task, and the authority that you have all influence which leadership style will be most effective. Successful leaders take all of those factors into account before they act. If there's one takeaway from today's lecture, it is this. Leadership isn't about using the same style every time. It's about understanding the situation and adapting your approach to help your team accomplish the mission safely, effectively, and professionally. As we close today's lesson, I want to leave you with a challenge. Think back to a time when you had to lead others. It could have been at work, in school, in the military, as a coach, or even during a group project. Ask yourself 3 questions. First, what was your default leadership style? Did you naturally take charge, collaborate with others, or step back and delegate? More importantly, did you intentionally choose that style, or did you simply react out of habit? Second, what factors influenced the situation? Think about the people you were leading, the tasks that needed to be accomplished, and the authority you had. Were those conditions working in your favor, or were they creating challenges? Finally, would a different leadership style have produced a better outcome? That's a question effective leaders continually ask themselves. Leadership is a skill that develops through reflection and a willingness to learn from every experience. The best leaders aren't perfect. They're always evaluating their decisions and looking for ways to improve. That's exactly the mindset I hope you'll continue to develop throughout this course. So today we learned that effective leadership isn't about finding one perfect style. It is about matching your leadership approach to the situation. Contingency theory asks, does my leadership style fit the circumstances? In our next lesson, we're going to build upon that idea by exploring situational leadership. Instead of focusing primarily on the situation, we'll look at the people you're leading and how their experience, confidence, and readiness should influence your leadership style. We'll discuss the different stages of follower development, how to recognize where someone is in that process, and how to adjust your level of direction and support to help them succeed. Together, contingency theory and situational leadership provide a practical framework that every criminal justice leader can use, whether you're supervising a rookie officer, mentoring an experienced investigator, or leading a team through a critical incident. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.